Today's video is brought to you by Assiniboia Downs Gaming and Event Center. And be sure to tune in to Trust the Profits Live Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern for Monday Night Lights, hosted by Matthew DeSantis.
Salutations and welcome, friends. I'm your host of this Belmont Stakes Spotlight Series. My name is Matthew DeSantis. You can find me on Twitter at the handle @Failed to Menace. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode that we are going to be devoted to a little bit of a late entry on that probables list for the Belmont Stakes. MIRACOLO coming in from Gulfstream Park for Antonio Sano. A lot of things to talk about with this horse that has a few intriguing elements to it that I'm interested in talking through with you all today. But before we get to that, make sure to press that subscribe button. Make sure to get all of our great content here on Trust the Profits. We got live betting Monday nights, obviously, at Assiniboia Downs. We got Thursday night cocktail lounges. We got handicapping shows from Doubling Down to Capping the Card to Graded Stakes previews. We got weekly horse racing shows like the Win Play Show that keeps you up to date with all sorts of horse racing news. We got so much content for you, whether it's about the Belmont, the Triple Crown, whether it's going into the summer, Monmouth, Saratoga, going into the fall, Pennsylvania Derby, Keeneland, going into the late fall, Breeders' Cup. Listen, we got you covered no matter what you're interested in. We're even going to be doing a lot of international race coverage, Royal Ascot, focusing on those Euros before they start coming over for the Breeders' Cup. Want to get you guys prepared for that so you know who to bet on when it comes time to Breeders' Cup at Santa Anita this year. But listen, let's swing back, start talking about MIRACOLO. Make sure to like this video, comment below with what chances do you think MIRACOLO has at winning this year's Belmont Stakes, and whether or not you give this horse any shot at all, and whether or not you're going to be giving this long shot any chance on your ticket. So MIRACOLO, interesting horse, like I said, coming out of Gulfstream Park, but it's a horse that I think a lot of us are familiar with, even if we don't know it. It's one of those names, MIRACOLO, that we've probably seen on past performances, and we have seen on past performances in a lot of big races, but this horse is usually a long shot and has not particularly run well, but has run in big-time spots throughout most of this horse's career. So this horse is not going to be overwhelmed by the bright lights of New York and the Belmont Stakes. This horse has run in big-time Derby prep races the whole season. It's an interesting horse. So let's dive into MIRACOLO a little bit and talk more about this one. And you can see a lot of races to this horse's credit, but let's start up top with this horse's pedigree, which I think is quite intriguing. Gunrunner up top, Dam by Tappet underneath. Now, we talk all the time on these videos about the connection to Tappet, right? 4 of the last 9 winners were sired by Tappet. Having a Dam by Tappet can't hurt, especially when you have a sire like Gunrunner up top. Same sire as, of course, Red Route 1, who's also in this race. So from a pedigree standpoint, there's a lot of things that make sense. There's a lot of things to suggest this horse can, in fact, get the 1.5 mile distance. Now, when you look at the past performances, you look at this horse's career statistics, there's a little bit to be desired. This horse has 2 wins in 10 career starts and 3 second places. Now, those 3 second places all came before this horse broke its maiden. This horse finished second 3 times, the first 3 times out in his career. Goes second, finally breaks a maiden at Gulfstream Park in November of last year, and then immediately steps up into really the Derby prep season. Goes to the Remsen Stakes, finishes 6th that day at Aqueduct, then goes back down to Gulfstream Park and starts the Florida circuit for the Derby prep. Runs in the Mucho Macho Man, finishes 7th. Runs in the Holy Bull, finishes 5th. Runs in the Fountain of Youth, finishes 6th. Runs in the Curlin Florida Derby, finishes 6th there as well. Now, did it from the far outside post that time, which is not easy. Or one of the far outside posts, I should say, not the far outside post, but one of them. But still, this is a horse that has kind of also ran in all of these big races. Then comes back and drops out of graded stakes competition, goes and runs in a 1-turn mile allowance optional claimer at Gulfstream Park and wires the field and gets that second win. I don't know what to make of this horse. This is all to say I don't know what to make of this horse after 10 career races, because this horse is clearly not in the same caliber as horses like Forte, a horse like Rocket Can, who it ran against, a horse like Mage, obviously, even a horse like Cyclone Mischief from the Florida Derby. not good enough to beat those types of horses. But, and there's always a but, the horse showed great speed in that one-turn mile race and took them gate to wire in that race, going one turn on the mile at Gulfstream Park. That's interesting to me. It's interesting for two reasons. One, I wonder if this horse has finally figured out, or if Antonio Sano has finally said, listen, just get this horse on the front end. This horse needs to be on the lead. The other thing to point out is I don't know if this horse wants to be on the lead for a mile and a half, because when you look at this horse, when he was routing and when he was doing the Holy Bull and the Fountain of Youth and the Florida Derby, he couldn't get to the lead. This was not a horse that could get to the lead, was sitting more mid-pack. So I'm interested in what's the strategy with Il Miracolo as we get to the Belmont Stakes. The other reason I'm interested in, even if he is a long shot, who you say, Matthew, he doesn't have any shot at all of winning, if they decide to gun it, if they decide to say, listen, we saw what he did on the lead in the one-turn mile at Gulfstream Park, gun it, okay, just go. Now that changes things for National Treasure a little bit, because now suddenly there might be pace pressure on National Treasure, and there might be early leader pressure on National Treasure. And that changes the dynamic of the race, because maybe suddenly the pace pressure stiffens up those fractions a little bit more, and National Treasure can't set things his own way and can't set his fractions the way he wants up on the front end, because a horse like Il Miracolo is pressing a little bit. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it's going to be very interesting. I'll be very eager to kind of see how forwardly trained he is leading up to the Belmont Stakes, particularly that last work right before the Belmont. That's usually an indicator. Is this horse, how are they going to, what's the plan with this horse? We're already seeing that with National Treasure. Johnny Velasquez worked the horse out on Tuesday, May 30th, and gave that horse a strong workouts early and then slowed him down late. That was on purpose. Try to teach the horse, this is what I want you to do. Use a lot of speed early, then we're going to slow it down. That's what they plan to do in the Belmont. What does Il Miracolo plan to do in the Belmont? I think he's a real wild card here. Again, I don't view him as any sort of a threat to win the race or to even hit the board, but I think he's an interesting horse from a standpoint of, could he have an impact on the way the pace ends up setting up? Or do you say, listen, National Treasure is just a better specimen, is just a better creature than Il Miracolo, and will be able to outfoot that horse to the first turn and still be able to then tap on the brakes a little bit and be able to set his own pressure and set his own pace, I should say. I think that's a valid argument to make in favor of National Treasure against Il Miracolo, but he's an interesting horse. And Sano, listen, Antonio Sano obviously trains one of the horses I loved from last year, Simplification, and that was a horse that ran a lot. And I think is finally getting a little bit of a break. But that's a horse that is, Il Miracolo is kind of following the same type of lead, in that this horse that's just running a ton and has a lot of miles on him already, 10 career races, going to his 11th, just got his second career victory in a one-turn mile. How does that translate to going around Big Sandy and those big looping turns and a mile and a half? I just don't have as much confidence in this horse. But again, from a pace perspective, maybe he mucks things up a little bit on the front end for a horse like National Treasure. And now suddenly it opens up for those horses that might be those deep closers, a horse like a Red Route 1, or a horse sitting mid-pack like Tapit Trice or Forte, to really be able to close into something and get the pace that they want, to be able to have the leaders on the front end tire late in the race. So Il Miracolo, even if you don't think he's a viable win threat or a bet threat in any way, even on those trifectas and supers, and I certainly don't, he still is a horse that could have an impact on the outcome of this race. So certainly a horse to consider, pay attention to in the PPs, pay attention to from a training standpoint, even if you're not going to end up using him from a betting standpoint. Well, listen, that's going to do it for this Belmont Stakes preview spotlight on Il Miracolo, but we got a whole lot more of these coming. So make sure to subscribe to Trust the Profits to get all of our Belmont content. We're going to have a lot of great stuff from a lot of different NYRA personalities are going to be joining us to giving us their thoughts We're going to be doing a lot of handicapping as well, the live betting, the domestic and international racing. We got you covered here on Trust the Profits. So press that subscribe button. Additionally, make sure to like this video and comment below with what chances do you give Il Miracolo. I am sure that one or two of you are going to make the case for him, because no matter how much of a long shot I think a horse is, one or two of you always make the case for him. And I always appreciate that. And I mean that sincerely, because that's why I love listening to other people's opinions about horses and getting other people's feedback, because sometimes you all see something that I might not have seen. So make sure to let us know your thoughts on Il Miracolo for this year's Belmont Stakes. Well, until next time, friends, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and profitable day at the races and reminding you that it's now post time.